Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Alex. I'm reading from Allbyon to Britannia by Brandy Pearson, Book 1, The Witches of Old Albion, and we're about to read the final part of the first story, which is The Witch and the 12 Days of Christmas. Ellen Brent and her friend Kate have found themselves in possession of a wizard's wand covered in runes with hints of evil about it. And they've got some enchanted mice and all kinds of stuff, and we're going to find out what's happening. So, if you're sitting comfortably, I'll begin. During the course of the following day, several people tried to find out more, but Mistress Ellen would not say a word about the end of her story. Everyone assembled after supper, eager for the end of the tale. So, Ellen continued, we were two witches with a wizard wand. We did not know if we could trust the prior, but who else could we turn to? Carefully, without touching it, we wrapped it up in my silk scarf and returned to the porter. First, we asked if there was a reply to our note. He said the prior had been too busy to read it. He obviously hadn't delivered it to him. Then we unwrapped the wand and showed it to him, and his attitude changed. What are you doing with that? We told him we'd found it down the river at low tide. You'd better give it to me, he said, reaching out through his little hatch. But we were having none of that. If we can't come in the academy, we said, we would like the prior to come and see us, in the staff and book, and we returned home. It was quite late by then, so we returned to my room. Over a cup of cocoa, Kate and I tried to work out what was going on. The 12 days of Christmas were known as a time when evil magic loses much of its power, because we are celebrating the coming of the Christ child, the return of light into the world. That must be why the green boy was able to give the gifts and work against the evil wizard who had him in thrall. Even following the pattern of the song would help him along, which must be why he had taken the trouble to give me all the gifts, to arrange them in the pattern of the song. But it also meant that the next day, Epiphany, 12th night, would be the last gift, and the last chance to free the green boy, restore the mice, and whatever other evil spells had been cast by the wand that had something to do with all these strange gifts. But that would need someone to use the wand, a wizard. But how could even a wizard use the wand without touching it? And what wizard? Could we trust any of them? Even the prior? We slept badly, our heads full of questions. The next morning, there were 12 wooden dollies laid in a line outside my door. I'd barely taken them in when there was a knock at the door. A very grand-looking wizard, complete with a purple-pointed hat, stood there. "It's the prior!" Kate hissed in my ear. Unsure how far we could trust him, she hastily covered the remaining gifts, including the mice, on the table with a cloth, and there was little she could do about the 10 miniature trees. I invited him in. He was very polite, but his eyes were darting all around the room, taking everything in. "The porter tells me you found a wizard's wand down by the river. I wonder if I might see it?" he asked. I carefully unwrapped it and showed it to him. He went pale, clearly shocked at what he was saying, but carried on smoothly. "I wonder who that can belong to. Very careless." But I had the feeling he knew much more than he was saying. "Thank you for finding it," he said. But he didn't sound particularly thankful. "I think it's probably best if I take charge of it. We wouldn't want anything to happen to you, and wands can be so dangerous in the hand of anyone not trained in their use." Was that care for us, or a veiled threat? Then he plucked it out of its silken wrapper before I had the chance to stop him, and was out the door and gone. We were taken aback. I thought, typical wizard arrogance, but Kate had seen the prior a few times around the city. "I thought he might end up with the wand," she said, "but I thought he'd charm it out of us. I thought it'd be smooth, persuasive, not just snatch it like a kid and run away." "There's something wrong here," I said, and then it came to me. He recognised that wand, and he must have known the evil in it, but he grabbed it with his bare hands. I think that wand belongs to him. The green boy gave it to me. He must have known I couldn't use it, but he put a lot of effort getting it out of the wizard's school. I think we've got to go and get it back. Sitting here telling you this tale, that might sound quite brave or foolish, but I was scared. The Academy of High Magic sent out wizards all across Albion. If the prior was evil, what did that mean for the whole land? And what would happen if we tried to get the wand back? Our only hope was that it was still the 12th day of Christmas, and the evil magic was still weak. There was no point trying to get in through the front gate, so we'd have to try the water gate. The tide was out, but coming in. We clambered down onto the muddy foreshore from a ramp nearby and walked along as the water advanced. We were knee-deep by the time we got to the portcullis that protected the water gate. It looked impassable, but we felt around under the water and realised we could hold our breath and squeeze underneath. Everything we touched was slimy, and the water was freezing, but we got in. We didn't dare use any magic to dry ourselves off, in case it attracted attention. So dripping wet, we climbed the steps and into the school. There was, of course, a door, but it had been left open, we hoped by the green boy, that we might be walking into a trap. In we went. There was no one to be seen. There were doors to left and right, but we went straight on and up the stairs as quietly as we could. The place seemed deserted. We emerged into a large courtyard and the inside of the front gate. Then we heard thumping from a room next to the gate. We sneaked over and looked through the window. The porter was lying on the floor, his head bleeding, a gag in his mouth and bound with rope. He was using his feet to bang on the door. What was going on? The door had been locked from the outside, but the key had been left on the flagstones nearby, so we unlocked it and went in. His ropes had spells upon them, so we had the devil of a job trying to free him. Luckily, when we took the gag out of his mouth, he had a spell or two of his own, and we eventually got him free. I think it was a mark of the state he was in that he did not seem to notice that we were witches. "He's gone mad, stupid old bugger," were his first words. "Who? The prior?" he asked. "No, old Casper in the Watergate. Whacked me on the head and tied me up." "The prior came this morning and took that wand," I began. "The only wizard who's left this place today was Casper. We've got to find the prior." We raced behind him up more stairs to a carved oak door with prior written on it in gold. The door swung open, and there was the prior, trussed up on the floor like the porter had been. As we freed the prior, it became clear what had happened. The porter had told the prior about the wand. Because we said we'd found it on the foreshore, the prior had asked Wizard Casper, the Watergate porter, if he had seen any wizards down by the river who might have lost a wand. He said he had not, but later he came to the prior's chamber and knocked him out and tied him up, and then the same to the porter. The wizard who had come and taken the wand was not the prior at all, but this Wizard Casper disguised as the prior. The prior was in such a state that he also seemed not to notice we were witches as he led us back down to the Watergate rooms. It was still strangely quiet, but the prior broke open one of the doors in the passageway with a spell. Inside, an aged wizard was using the wand from our box to inflict pain on the green boy. Because he had stolen his voice, the green boy could not scream, but he was writhing on the floor in agony. I was so angry that I launched myself at the nasty old wizard and knocked him to the ground. In his surprise, he let go of the wand, and it soared across the room. Kate and I both sat on the wizard, which was as effective as stopping him moving about as any spell. The green boy went for the wand, but the prior stopped him. "Don't touch it, it will destroy you." "Then how can we undo his spells?" I asked. "If you and the porter tie him up securely, I think I've got something we can use." And he dashed off. We had trussed Wizard Casper up like a Christmas goose by the time the prior returned, wearing a heavy iron gauntlet on his right hand. "This is the iron glove. With this I will be able to pick up the wand and use it," he said. And he did. First, he freed the green boy. The iron collar around his neck fell away, and his mouldy rags transmuted into a green tunic. "At last I am free!" he cried and danced around the room. He stopped suddenly. "We have to go to your room and free the others." "What others?" the prior cried, as we raced back to the staff and book, leaving the porter to guard Casper. This time we used the front gate. It turned out that the 6 piebald mice were wizards from Gallia. The 12 dollies were lazy wizards in beautiful silken robes who had come all the way from Hindi? The 11 amber beads became angry young blonde wizards from Norway. The 5 silver coins turned back into the wizard knights from the land of the Moors in fine shiny armour, and the 4 apostle spoons were 4 monks from Italia. Restored to their original forms, the gifts took up a lot more room. It was untrue that visitors to the wizard school did not enter through the Watergate. All these wizards had come that way and been enchanted by Casper before anyone else knew they had arrived. The prior was mortified. He took them all down to the public bar of the staff and book and gave the rather surprised innkeeper a whole bag of coins to give them something to eat and drink, while we sorted it all out. Kate and I had just ushered the last of them downstairs and were sitting recovering when the wizard, who had been the head mouse, whose name was Lothair, returned with the prior and the green boy. "The other book," were his first words as he opened the door. For a moment I did not know what he meant. Then I realized the one gift that had not been used or changed was the other blank book. Hurriedly I opened it, and there was a final spell, the shape-shifting spell that Caspar had used to impersonate the prior, and a horrid idea came into my head. If he could impersonate the prior, perhaps he could impersonate Caspar himself. Who exactly was he? So the prior, still holding the evil wand with the iron glove, the green boy, Wizard Lothair, Kate, and I dashed back to the wizard school. What does a shapeshifter do when he's tied up? He shifts into a smaller shape and gets free. When we arrived in the Watergate rooms, the ropes were empty and the poor porter stunned on the floor. The evil wizard had shifted into a shape of a young boy and escaped. It had only happened moments ago. The young boy had run down towards the Watergate. So, before a word more was spoken, the green boy raced after him and we all followed, except, as it turned out, the prior. The tide was now in, and we could see the young boy had escaped under the portcullis and swum away. He'd swum quite a distance by the time we got there, but the green boy was a river sprite. He dived in and fairly shot through the water. He quickly caught up with the boy, and there was a struggle, but in his own element the green boy was stronger and started to drag him back to the Watergate. By this time the prior had returned with a tall, ornate wizard staff, and the green boy had brought the struggling wizard as a boy to the steps. "This is the prior's staff," cried the prior in a commanding voice. "It can bind or destroy any wizard. Beg forgiveness for your crimes against this academy, or I will destroy you." He had seemed to be such a nice man, but now he was a powerful wizard who was very angry. We kept out of the way. The boy struggled against the binding spell and tried to find a shape that could free himself. From a boy to an eel to a dragon to a giant, all the while cursing the prior and us, and the green boy, and anyone else he could think of. "This is your last chance!" the prior yelled at him, but he was not going to submit. The prior pointed the wand at him, and an ice-blue flame shot out of the crystal embedded in the tip, and the evil wizard, who now seemed to be all shapes and none, gave a great cry of anger and ceased to be. It was more shocking than if there had been a thunderclap or some other great noise. The water where he had been filled the hole where he no longer existed with a splosh, and there was an eerie silence. Someone like the prior spends most of his time in public being nice to people, friendly, helpful, charming. He seldom needed to display the power he had in that staff, the prior staff, which came with the job. We all looked at him in a new light after that. "So was that Wizard Caspar?" I asked. "No," said the green boy. He showed us to a damp, forgotten dungeon room, the walls lined with shelves full of the stolen belongings of those the evil wizard had enchanted. But there was more. A door had appeared at the back of the dungeon. It must have been hidden by his enchantments. When it was opened, there was Wizard Caspar, the real one. He was in a bad state, having been in the dark for several years. The evil wizard could only shift into the form of someone who was alive, so he'd kept him fed and watered in this dark dungeon. Poor old soul! If he had not been batty before, he was now. We managed to get the story out of him, how a wizard had arrived at the Watergate and tricked him and locked him away. That evening, 12th night, we were officially invited to a party at the wizard school, the first witches ever to be so honoured. It was a fine evening, but the prior had had time to think and realise that these two witches knew all about these embarrassing events. He had the sense and perhaps the good manners not to try any kind of enchantment, but he did his best to charm us into silence with his power of his personality. In the end I told him I'd never used the story maliciously, but I couldn't keep such a good story to myself. Lothair and the other galleon wizards found out, probably from Kate, that I wanted a caravan and had my beautiful home made for me. So when spring came, I set off to get as far from the city of the White Tower as I could by Christmas time. So here I am in the north, and when I came to these hills and dales I saw no wizards' towers, so I decided here I would tell my story, which I've told nowhere else, and I hope you liked it. Mistress Ellen Brent stood up and gave a little curtsy, and everyone clapped and clapped in appreciation. Then she returned to her cosy caravan, feeling very satisfied to have finally told someone her story of the 12 Days of Christmas. The end. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that. Please come back next time for the next story in the Witches of Old Albion, which is The Witch and the White Mouse.